When you or your loved one is injured in a car or slip and fall accident, one of the most important decisions you're going to make is the lawyer that you hire. At Alam Law, we take pride in the fact that every person who calls for a free consultation speaks to one of our personal lawyers, not just a legal assistant or agent. Call Alam Law at 416-625-2636 for a free consultation. And remember, you do not pay anything unless I win your case.
A good day to all of you. You just heard Haniely Pableo, a Filipino-Canadian singer, sing the song. We have her with us today in the program Living Multiculturalism with Mayank Bhatt. As you know, you're watching TAG TV, and the program is brought to you by the Canadian Thinkers Forum. Welcome, Haniely.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So let's start with what made you think about becoming a singer?
I didn't really think about it. It just sort of just happened. With I was a student at that time, and then I get to meet this Filipino Canadian youth who were doing arts. So I just attended a workshop at the Kapisanan Philippine Center for Arts and Culture in downtown Toronto, and it just really happened. It's not like I planned it or anything. The opportunity was there, so I just kind of like grabbed it.
Were you singing from a young age, or is it something that happened suddenly?
When I was in school, I used to be part of I'm always part of dancing or in a choir from high school to college in the Philippines. So I was always part of the choir, but I never sing melody. I'm always like the harmony because I'm the alto in the choir, and I always perform with a group, not really just a solo singer. So yeah.
That led you to be part of this group. You told me that you came to Canada about a decade back.
Yeah, 9 years ago, 2006. When my mom is a live-in caregiver, and she petitioned us to join her here in Canada. So that was 9 years ago.
What has been your experience living in a society that at once acknowledges you and at the same time makes it slightly difficult for you to integrate?
Yeah, it was tough, especially when you're young. I was in my 20s, early 20s, and at that age, you kind of want to feel belong to your social group of that age, and it's hard because almost always, even at work, when you meet people and you hang out with them, or you meet people at school, you're always kind of like the odd one, like the different one, and then I couldn't find the work that I wanted to do because I didn't have the qualifications that I needed, so I had to upgrade I had to go back to school to actually get that. And I graduated Bachelor of Science in Nursing in the Philippines, but it wasn't recognized here, so I had to go back to school, and it's just hard to integrate in a way because it's really culturally different. Like, if you go to a social group with your coworkers and they're having jokes and stuff, and you can't understand it, you don't get it because you just don't understand. Oh, that was a joke. Like, I didn't find it as a joke, but it was actually a joke. Okay. So you kind of learn along the way. And when I came here in my 20s, when I was in the Philippines, I don't really drink alcohol. Like I would go out with my friends, but we were never the type to like drink, like sit down, and that's kind of like the social gathering here for young people. Like you go to a pub and then you drink and then you chat. But then when I was like, I remember my first time I hang out with my coworkers, and most of them are like students as well. And I wasn't in school at that time yet. I was saving up for school. And I remember, oh, this is their party. So you sit down, you drink alcohol, and then you chat. But then there's nothing for you to share because you don't really connect with them in that way. So you're just kind of quiet there, and then just listening to them and whatever, and just absorb everything. I'm like, okay, so this is their party. They just sit down and drink, but I don't really drink, so I just had one beer, and then I didn't even finish the beer because that was the first drink I had in Canada. But yeah, you learn along the way, and when they go, it was so funny too, because they're young people, they always like dressed up when they go out and stuff, and I'm not used to that. Like we go out, okay, let's just go out, and like there's no effort to kind of like look to dress up or something. So I was wearing we went to this restaurant. It's actually a fancy restaurant, and everybody was like wearing dresses and stuff, and I was wearing cargo pants and sneakers and a t-shirt. And then when I came there, I was like, oh, this is actually a formal dinner. I just thought it was like, because when you say party in the Philippines, when you just party, you just go eat and dance and sing karaoke, and it's usually like at someone's house. It's not really like you go to
A restaurant.
yeah. Even when with my even with my friends, like we go to each other's houses. If you say party, it's usually about eating and there's not really drinking, but here it's different.
So, what kind of musical influences kind of formed
My
your
art,
choices, your art?
it's actually a little bit contradicting and strange because I grew up, like I said, I was in a choir, and we usually sing in masses in churches, like for the school, because in the Philippines we always have like at school we have masses every first Friday of the month because usually Catholic schools are like that. So most of the songs we sing are praise and worship songs, like religious songs and stuff. But we also sing other songs that are not, but the bulk of it is religious songs. And I grew up really not listening to, because my music is hip hop and rap music, but my influences are not hip hop music. It's mostly pop music and Bon Jovi and Nirvana. So it's kind of like contradicting. So as I'm discovering myself, it's also my own discovery of the music. There's no like, I didn't really think of like, oh, I want to be this is the way I want my music to go. It just sort of like went that way.
What languages do you sing in?
I sing in my native tongue is Cebuano, and I'm also fluent in Tagalog, so two Filipino languages.
And you have a mass following, I have heard.
Not a lot, but yeah, there's a few, but yeah.
So, what sort of audiences do you try to reach out to?
When we first planned to make an album, I already had a lot of material before we decided to make an album, because at first, for me, it was just like an outlet with the stressors of being here and doing with life in general. So I just happened to know people who do creative arts and music, so it was mostly just a jam session, and there's no plan that, oh, we're gonna go to the studio and make a song. It didn't happen that way. It was just like, oh, can you come down to my house, and then we'll record and whatever, and then I'll just come, and then okay, I'll try this song, and then we kind of like build a lot of material. And so one of my friends, who's actually the executive producer of the album, is like, we have to make an album because you have a lot of material and this has to come out. And he's like, we're going to apply for a grant from the Ontario Arts Council. And I was like, okay, like we can try that. And so we applied for the grant and we got it. So that's why we made the album. But the song, most of the songs were already recorded. They just needed more polishing and production. So yeah, like I said, I never really planned on being a rapper or a hip hop artist or whatever. It just sort of like happened that way. So it's kind of very organic in a way.
And was the album was released, I think, a couple of years back?
2014, I released it on my birthday in 2014.
And subsequently you've done other work also, right? I read recently on social media that two of your songs have been picked up by a record label and have been shown on American television.
In 2012, two of my songs, even before they were released, even before we made the album, it was chosen. It was licensed by EMI UK, and then just recently, I was 5 of my songs, and my album is only 8. There's only 8 songs, and 5 of the songs in that album were licensed for an American show. It's an Amazon original series. It's called Mad Dogs. So I've heard one of my followers on Facebook sent me a message and like, oh, congratulations, your song is on this episode and blah blah blah. And I'm like, I didn't even know that the show already came out. Like I knew that they picked it up, but I didn't know that the show is already done and it already came out. I learned it from somebody who sent me a random person who sent me a message on Facebook. And so it got the episode was shown in one of these Facebook groups, and yeah, it was an episode 2, and it's kind of like, for us, it's an achievement because in a way, it's an American English show, and then it's Filipino music that's chosen for one of the soundtracks of the episodes.
What is the show called?
Mad Dogs.
Mad Dogs, and it's on American TV.
It's Amazon original series. Yeah, I think you can watch it online. I haven't seen it yet.
Okay.
I haven't actually seen it.
Do they pay you for this?
They do, because when they license a song, you always have to. I think it's a Sony project. Yeah. So
that brings me to the issue, and you made a very important point that it is shown on an American TV, and the language is not English.
Yeah.
So how does it make you feel to be working in an atmosphere, in an environment where your language is alien?
Yeah.
But you're still accepted.
Yeah.
But not to the extent that you would want them to accept you.
Yeah. When we first made the album, one of our main goals is to prove that language is not a barrier to good music. So there was a time when I was kind of like pressured to write in English. There was a time when I was pressured, but I was like, if I were to write something, because these songs are mostly just poetry that I've written on my own. I didn't really intend them to be songs. They just happened to, there was an opportunity to make it into a song, so I'm like, okay. But I'm always, there's a lot of articles out there about racism in music in Toronto, and there's an article in Now magazine that came up just recently about the racism in a multicultural city in the music scene in Toronto. And for me, one of our main purposes of the album, like I said, is to prove that language is not a barrier to good music. If it's good music, it's good music. It doesn't matter if it's in Hindi,
yes,
Hindi or Filipino or Chinese. Like for me, music, if it moves you in a way, then it has done its job. But of course, my target at that time was really the young immigrants who just came here, the people who are like me, who sort of in limbo of if they assimilate or they this internal conflict, because I felt it too, like, should you just abandon who you were, or should you just adapt to this new culture and whatnot? But And I think that tension of being an immigrant, of being of being Filipino at the same time wanting to be Canadian, it will always be there with you as an immigrant, and with as a young person, like it's kind of hard because I don't know how to explain it, but I think you get the gist of what I'm saying.
Yes, and I do, and therefore there's a question that comes immediately as a response to that is then what do you do? What do you decide?
Yeah,
Do you have a conflicted existence?
yeah, like your identity.
Do you decide to abandon your Filipino roots, or do you kind of say yeah okay goodbye Philippines, I'm now Canadian.
Yeah, but then the next question would be what is Canadian? Like what really is Canadian? It's different. It's like a quilt. It's like patches of different Canadians. Like I don't know how to explain it.
Does it reflect into your songs? Does it
It
reflect
does,
into your
cause
poetry?
it does, cause our the music that we do, it's in Filipino languages, and we also integrate Filipino instruments, indigenous instruments into it, like the kulintang and the agong and the kubing. So in my album, it was integrated, but we fuse it with hip hop beats. So it's kind of like a fusion of two cultures, the Western and the Filipino, in one. So it can be done. But then the what I'm saying is when it comes to like your Canadian identity, there's always that tension of you being Filipino and at the same time Canadian. Because every time I like in my travels too, I always encounter this when they say you're you're 50%, like with people who have biracial parents or something. They always say, "Oh, I'm 50% Filipino and I'm 50% Canadian." Like, and I'm like, I don't think that's the way you should think. You should say, "I'm 100% Filipino and I'm also 100% Canadian, and in total, I am 100% human being." You know what I mean? Like why do you have to say, "Oh, you're 50% this and you're 50% that," when you can be 100% for both? Because you definitely represent both. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do. And does your music try to reflect that identity, or
I think so.
is it no? The question that I have in mind is, if you choose to be creative in a language,
Yeah.
especially in music, then are you not limiting your audience to just people who understand that language,
Mhm.
or are
Mhm.
you trying to transcend and reach the language of music, which is universal?
Could I would say both, but I wanna for the album specifically. We the title of the album is my pet name in the Philippines. My pet name in the Philippines is Han Han amongst my family. So if I were to name my album that, then it has to reflect me as Han Han. But at the same time, because we fuse it with Western music as well, and not just Filipino music, so I think it also transcends the universal language of music. And it being picked up by an American English show, for me, is another validation that it has transcended to that level. But initially, our purpose was, for me, personally, because the people I worked with were mostly Filipino Canadians born and raised in Canada, and they sometimes, most of them actually don't understand the words that I'm saying in my album. But um, I think my writing in Filipino is kind of like my form of resistance against assimilation, but also at the same time like validating my own Filipino heritage. And I'm saying to my message to those who were like me, who came to Canada as young immigrants, that it can be done, and you don't need to be ashamed of who you are just to be accepted to this new culture. And that as an immigrant, you always feel like you're different from everybody else. You're always like the odd one. And I'm saying it's okay to be the odd one. It's okay to be different. You know what I mean? Like it's okay to be you, and you don't need to conform to what the idea of being Canadian is that stereotypically other people are saying. Like when I eat, we Filipinos, we eat with our hands or we eat with a fork and a spoon, and they always say, "Oh, you're so Filipino," or we eat rice with spaghetti, and you're like, "Oh, you're so Filipino." And because in my community, what really initiated me to actually start writing is like there's this great divide among the youth, and they always say the young people who just came here like fresh off the boat, they that's the term that is a derogatory term for me. And then the bacons are the ones that are born and raised in Canada, and there's always this great divide between these two youth groups, because they don't seem to kind of like connect with each other, because
They don't connect or they don't want to connect?
maybe both, because there's always this great divide that I felt it too. Somebody called me a fob, and at that time that I was called a fob, I didn't know what it means. I just smiled. I'm like, okay, I didn't know what that means, and then I learned what it means, and I'm like, no way, because sometimes I feel like because you're new and your English is not very good, that you're not at par with them in terms of like maybe intellectually or whatever. But I didn't think that way. Like for me, language is just language. There's no hierarchy. Just because you speak English very well doesn't mean you're smarter than me. Like you can't even speak my language. I can understand you, but you can understand me if I speak my language, And I have to like, you being bilingual is actually an asset. It's not some, you know what I mean? Like you're actually smarter than those who actually just speak one language. And in the new immigrants, especially the young people in my community, most of them gets discouraged. Like there's research that shows that they don't go to school anymore, like the young people, because there's a lot of like socioeconomic issues, because most of them are dependents of live-in caregivers like me, and they just go to work and be breadwinners and just earn, and they don't really have the encouragement to actually go further than that they can. And pretty much that's like my advocacy as a young immigrant, that you can go back to school, you can do the things you want to do, but somehow it's hard to like maybe through the arts you can encourage them to show them that you actually can, it is possible.
And that brings me to that question that, immigrants like you and me and a lot of other people who are here, they have to constantly wage a battle between their aspirations to be creative as well as to sustain themselves economically.
Yeah.
What has been that challenge for you?
It was a bit challenging, because when I was doing most of the arts is when I was a student, a university student in Toronto. So on my free time, I'd do arts, but you have to make time for it. It's not something that just, like, yes, I went to school full time, and I have 2 part-time jobs. I worked in retail, and I was a nanny for a 3-year-old, and I make time for the arts, because for me that was my channel somewhat. When you're stressed and you got so many things to say, and like, okay, I just got lucky that I get to know a group of young people who are also doing creative work, but most of them, like I said, are born and raised here, so somewhat they're privileged in a way, because like us, we have to work double hard, because we have to like going back to school and having to pay for your own school and having responsibilities, paying your own bills and stuff like that. It's just too much. It is too much, but it's not easy. It's not an easy road, but it can be done. So during those first few years, yes, I did struggle with 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 sustaining yourself and doing creative work. But I always make time for it. If there's an opportunity, I always make time for it. So I guess that's it. Like, you just gotta breathe and just make time for it.
The other question that normally follows any struggle is once you're established,
Yeah.
and it's only a matter of time before you get established, do you then continue to meet the expectation of the audience that you have created, or do you then transplant yourself into a more broader audience by singing and writing for that audience, which means basically abandon the language in which you created earlier, and or mix the two, continue with one and also adopt the other?
When I was writing and when I was doing the album, I didn't really think about, oh, will this be played in the radio, or will this be, will someone appreciate this, or will someone buy this music and such. Those things for me were irrelevant. I didn't really think of those things. With me, I don't compromise stuff like that. Because at first, when we were doing the album, even, I was just gonna give it for free. The songs, I was just gonna give it for free. I was just gonna give the album for free. But then I met a cultural worker from the Philippines who's doing, it's the School of Living Traditions in Lake Cebu. It's in Mindanao. And they preserve Filipino culture and traditions to the next generation of the indigenous community. It's the Tiboli tribe in southern Mindanao. And in the Philippines, there's not really a lot of support and funding for the arts, especially indigenous arts. So I met this cultural worker in an event. It's a Filipino event. So I thought, maybe I'll just sell my album and use the money that I get from the album to donate to that organization so that they can continue their work. Because we were using indigenous instruments, Filipino indigenous instruments. So for me, it was just somewhat to give back to that community. But in terms of success, you can redefine it. Because with me, success is not being mainstream or being picked up, because these things just happen. I didn't plan these things, or if it didn't get picked up, so what? I did the work, it's out there, and those who appreciate the music, good. If they don't, it's just about preference. But I don't validate my success through monetary. It's good to earn money from your music, but that wasn't really.
No, I didn't mean money. Let me clarify. I didn't mean money. I
meant just audience. To get recognized.
I meant audience.
Yeah.
I meant audience, right? So you have whatever audience that you have right now.
Yeah.
But you're going to grow. You're going to have more audiences.
I know.
Then will you then adapt to satisfy that audience?
I don't know. I don't think so, because it's kind of scary if it goes that way. But I don't think it will, because I'm taking a break from it, because it's not that easy. It's not that easy to handle those things. Yeah, I was never somebody who actually seeks out for it anyway. If there's an opportunity, yeah, but no, I don't think I will do that.
What is the future for you now?
In terms of the arts?
Yes.
I don't really plan anything when it comes to my music. It's just right now my executive producer actually is currently in the Philippines learning how to make the gongs that we used, so that we can make more music. So he's coming soon. We're gonna be recording soon, just some material, but it's not just for me. It was just for fun, just jamming, just to produce whatever we can produce and whatever comes out of it. But it's not like we have to make this. No, because if it becomes like that, it becomes business, and I don't want it to be like that. I want to enjoy the creative process itself, and then we have 2 music videos coming up, but I don't know when it's gonna come up. But I'm sure this year we're actually releasing one on Monday, but it's not my music. I'm just, but it's this group that I always perform with. It's called Datu. So one of their songs is gonna be released on Monday, the music video. So it's coming. And there's also a documentary coming up soon. It's still in production. It's called Tawa. It's a short documentary about me and the music and being a nurse and being an immigrant and doing creative work and and how it affected the community and such. So that's what's ahead of me for this year and maybe next year. So, but in terms of like beyond that and what my aspirations are when it comes to like being an artist, like I don't really plan that. It's whatever opportunities out there or whatever I come up with, it's just kind of like something spontaneous that happens. It's not, I don't plan that. I'm already a planner in my nursing profession, so when it comes to the arts, the art side, it's just for fun for me. For me, it was just really for fun. Like I enjoy the creative process, but beyond that, it's just come what may. That's it.
We wish you the very best.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us. Friends, we were watching Haniely Pableo, a Filipino-Canadian singer. You were watching Living Multiculturalism with Mayank Bhatt. The show is on TAG TV and it's brought to you by the Canadian Thinkers Forum. Before we sign off, we want you to listen to one more creation by Haniely. And as usual, before I end the program, I always request you to send us your suggestions of who you want featured on this show and write to us of what you think about the show. Thank you and have a good day.
You're before your time. You are where you coming from. The stars, what you doing here with me? Now you can never leave. I lost my way alone, so far from my home, so far from the things I know. And now you're here with me tonight to make the world alright.
#1 multicultural channel. This is TAG TV.